I spent 5 or 6 years working for Emma Lagasse in New Orleans, and obviously if you spend enough time in New Orleans, it kind of rubs off on you.
Right, yeah.
And lagniappe as a term was basically like something extra or something special. So when we first started with this wine, and we don't do it every vintage, but in some vintages we add Viognier to it. And for me, the Viognier was the something extra.
There's a little something extra into it, okay. And so what does Viognier do whenever you add it to a red wine? Because I think some people might think...
Yeah, what you really use Viognier for is to kind of offset some of the tannin.
Okay.
It also gives you aromatics, because when you look at Viognier, I always tell candidates when I'm teaching them to taste that Viognier smells like Fruit Loops,
right?
And it has that tropical, almost candied kind of flavor. And just a little bit in Syrah really wakes it up.
Really.
And but originally it was actually used to darken color. There's, you would think that you add white to red and the wine actually, would make rosé.
Right.
But when you ferment them together, there's actually chemical reactions that make the wine actually darker.
It makes it a little darker, so it extracts more color. Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. Cool. So all right, let's give the 06 lagniappe a go here. So what kind of flavor descriptors or aromatics do you typically pick up on this?
Yeah, so like I was saying before, this is much more red fruit driven. It's cranberry, Bing cherry, raspberry kind of flavors, and that's exactly what we're looking for here. When we make this wine, obviously we're always thinking about the consumer, but I'm thinking less of, hey, this wine needs to be drank the minute that it's released. I'm really looking for the long haul. And we actually, because it is so tight and so young when we release it, we used to release it in the fall. Sorry, we used to release it in the spring, and I changed it to be 6 months later.
To give it some more time in the bottle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think it really needs it.
Yeah. I can see this wine, as being a wine that would benefit from maybe decanting even. Because it does, it's not, it's just a little, I don't want to say tight, but it seems like it's got, with a little bit of air. This is a wine, too, that seems like, definitely 12 years, 15 years that this wine's gonna really come into its own. I definitely get that red fruit character. It's like that like ripe red plum and some of that that rich kind of strawberry, a little bit of the raspberry characteristics coming through to it, but it's still full and round on the palate. This one's this is really nice here. And then what did you say on this, if there's any oak treatment that you put this through?
Yeah, this is 100% neutral oak. So when you use a barrel, the first year you get obviously lots of vanilla flavor, and they say that in the second year probably 50% of that oak flavor goes away. The third year, the 40% that's left is gone, and by year 4 and 5 you don't have any flavor for the most part. So this is mostly 4 and 5 year oak, and we also use a lot of puncheons on the Syrah for this, and the puncheons are pretty much 100% neutral.
So that's, I don't know for Washington or Walla Walla as a whole, but for the kind of the new world wineries that are out there, using 100% neutral oak for a wine that has this depth of flavor and has this kind of body, that's deviating from the recipe to an extent.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that like the vanilla flavor, and stylistically it's a different wine, not worse or better. It's just different. A lot of people are using kind of more of the Australian model. Where in the Barossa they tend to use a pretty good dose of American oak or French oak, and for me, I really wanted to showcase the earthy components, particularly in this wine.
Yeah.
And the 50% of this wine is a vineyard in Walla Walla called Forgotten Hills. And Forgotten Hills, it starts out really tart cherry, and within 5 or 6 years, it just totally switches and goes to black olive and smoked meat. So I didn't want to mess with that delicate balance. So we found that it's going to take your wine a little longer to open up. But we really liked not having the oak influence on this wine.
Yeah, does that as a winemaker, I know it's a business, and we've had some discussions here on Wines.com about wine scores and the critics' influence and things like that. Has that been beneficial to you to deviate from that recipe of a lot of oak, or has it hurt you, or has it just been, like you said, a different style of wine?
You know, sometimes you just kind of, shake your head and go, I don't know how that's happening. But
Yeah.
we've been, amazingly successful with both the critics and the consumers, pretty much doing whatever we want to do.
Really?
Yeah, making, whatever style that we want to make. And we've never sat and made a wine and say, hey, we're going to make this because the critics are going to like it.
Yeah.
And, it's been amazingly rewarding that we can still do well in the press with this style. And the consumers are definitely liking it. I mean, there's this whole thing like you can't sell Syrah. Well, we've been increasing Syrah production for the past 5 years. So, and Syrah is still the wine that sells out first.
Yeah. Well, and I see it from a buyer standpoint and a sommelier standpoint of, Washington Syrah is like, go out and buy some, try some. That seems to me like the consumers are definitely on board with that too. And kind of going back to the deal about the being successful with the critics and being successful with the consumers, I think it kind of just speaks to the fact that a good wine tastes good, not really depending on what style it's made in.
Absolutely.
And so I think that really kind of just speaks to to what you guys are doing there. So I guess for the general consumer that wants to take a trip out to Washington, is it something where you can drive out to Walla Walla and visit your winery or other wineries out there? Or I know there's a big base of tasting rooms and things like that in Woodinville. How are you guys set up? Do you have a tasting room or anything?
Yeah, we actually have a tasting room. Walla Walla, you fly either to Pasco, which is about a 45-minute drive, or you fly to Seattle, and then either drive, which is about 4 hours, or you can fly in an hour.
Okay.
It's not the easiest place to get to.
Yeah.
But the greatest thing about Walla Walla is, when you visit tasting rooms in Walla Walla, for the most part, you're going to be tasting with winemakers and owners of wineries. So, and there are very few places in the world left like that.
Right.
And it's an amazing small little town. The hospitality is fantastic, and I highly recommend that. If I always feel that if people put the effort in to visit us, I'm going to give them the best experience that I possibly can.
Right. Well, that's great. And yeah, I mean the opportunity to be able to taste with winemakers and grape growers, like you said, in pretty much any region that is visited heavily these days, you don't get that. So you get a little bit more intimacy visiting the Walla Walla region. Yeah. Well, great. So, Greg, I know you're actively involved with the Court of Master Sommeliers, and as someone who's in the program myself, I always get asked by people, how do I become a sommelier? What route do I need to take? What do I need to do? Do you have any advice or encouragement for people that want to get into the program or look into it more? What should they do? We live in an amazing world. When I started in 1992, there were no sommelier jobs, and it was really hard, and the internet basically wasn't even around yet. Yeah.
If you want to be a sommelier now, I go back and teach at Cornell every year. You could basically major in beverage management now at Cornell, which tells you, in 20 years how far we've come as a profession. If you want to get into the MS program, the greatest thing is there's so many people doing it right now. We probably have, there's probably 1,000 people right now studying for some sort of exam. I would say, find people who are in a tasting group. Really not that hard. Get on the Guild of Sommeliers website, guildsom.com. Amazing resource for studying and what's going on in the world of wine. And then basically taste with people. The sommelier profession has become a serious, legitimate profession, and it's actually not that difficult to get into now. Yeah.
Have you seen on the Twitterverse or YouTube or any of that, the documentary that's coming out called Somm?
Yeah, we've
the preview for that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really interesting and exciting look into what it actually takes to pass the best.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it too, and I think it'll be. I think it'll also be eye-opening to a lot of people that didn't know that something like that existed, and encouraging other people to get into the program for years to come. Well, great. Well, Greg, really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you.
Tasting us on your wines. Great offerings here from Gramercy, and in the big scheme of things, I think you're just getting going, and these wines are great now, and really look forward to seeing what comes in the future. You can visit Gramercy on the web. What is y'all's website?
www.gramercycellars.com.
Gramercycellars.com. You can always reach out to us here at Wines.com, on Twitter at Wines.com, and you can always hit me up on Twitter at Bill Elsey. Thank you guys for tuning in.